One, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And my name is Dave, and this is very exciting. You're a big time person. You're very humble. You're a very humble woman. She's an author. She's a huge vlogger, YouTuber, social media phenomenon. I just watched her on the Today Show. I read your book, High Achiever, cover to cover. I took notes. I have notes on your book. So just, this, Tiffany Jenkins, this is your life. And welcome to Dopey.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. And we need to just go ahead and lower the bar right now because you set me up to make me sound amazing. And I'm going to make it weird at some point. So,
well, I'm sure one of us will make it weird and then we'll come back. That's okay.
Yes,
that's the point of this thing, right? We fuck it up and then we come back.
Yes.
And like I was describing the show to Tiffany before we started, and she was, shocked and saddened when I told her about Chris. And you said, I hate addiction, right? But isn't it so strange the way like everything that we do is informed by our own struggle, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we're in control, but addiction takes a perfectly wonderful, completely loved person and turns them into a shell and just takes them away. And it breaks my heart when I hear about really good people who are doing really good things. And then just the next second they're gone. It's devastating.
It is. And the most important thing, and maybe the craziest thing, is that if it's like we could go out and use, right? And if we go out and use, we could just drop dead. And I think like that's something that I wasn't really comprehending. I don't even know if I comprehend it now. Like, I don't know that even though it happened to Chris and it happened to another friend and it happens to, millions of people every week, it's still hard to comprehend. Yeah. And I loved your book. I really did. And I think your story is awesome. I love that. I don't think we've had a show in a while, so I'm happy. We have a lot of women fans, so I'm happy that when you're a drug addict and you shot drugs, so I feel good about those things.
Yeah, totally did all of those things. I'll fit right in around here. I think it's very cool what you're doing, and I think it's cool that people have a place to go and feel like they're not alone. I think that's wonderful, and I'm super stoked to be a part of it.
Yeah, Dopey Nation. Welcome to the Dopey Nation. Okay. So welcome. And one thing, we have a bunch of things in common, obviously, but one thing was that we're both late bloomers. Like I think I had my first drink at like 16, right? And I drank to blackout, but I got so sick that I didn't drink again. Your story is like the classic alcoholic story, right?
Yeah. Well, it was like the moment that I took a sip of alcohol, it woke something up in me that I never knew existed prior. Like I was a really good kid. I was a cheerleader. My stepdad was a cop. I knew right from wrong. But the minute that I introduced that substance into my blood system, it was over. It was for the first time in my life. I didn't feel awkward or weird or out of place. I just felt nothing. And I was 18 years old. I was this close to finishing high school. I was a senior and I dropped out of school 3 months after that first sip. It happened so quick.
How does that happen though? So you have a sip. I mean, like that's something I read about it. I've heard you talk about it. You have a sip and you drop out. Like, how does that, like, what was the last 3 months of high school like?
Well, what happened was things that used to interest me no longer interested me. And once I found that I could navigate the world and not feel like shit about who I was as a person, it was the most freeing thing. And so I started skipping school to go hang out with these people who were drinking and smoking weed, because that's where I felt most okay. And I would go and I would try to sit in class, but all I could think about was drinking or numbing myself. And so the more I skipped, I was kicked off the cheerleading squad for my grades dropping. And then eventually I missed so many days that it felt pointless to keep going back. So then I just stopped. And of course, between the time I took that drink and was so desperate to hang out with these people, I had messed it up at my house. I had lied to my mom and snuck around and taken some of her money. And so she, by the time I dropped out of school, had already like washed her hands clean and was like, do you then, if that's what you want. So I went to live with my dad, who was an alcoholic. So it was perfect.
When you went and you lived with your dad and he was an alcoholic, did you drink with him? Did you get high with him? Was that a thing?
I didn't. It was weird. I knew what he was doing, and I think he knew what I was doing, but we never did it together. I think he was just so happy to be able to contribute to my life somehow, because he had been in and out of it. And so he's like, okay, now's my chance maybe to be a dad. He had 6 kids and hadn't been in any of our lives consistently up until that
Wasn't it
point.
like 6 kids by like 5 men or something?
Yes.
That's hardcore, right?
Yeah, I think it was 4 women.
The funniest thing to me, 4 women, excuse me. But when I read the book and your dad comes and visits you, I have this picture in my head of what your dad is like. And I imagine like this preppy guy who's an alcoholic with gray hair and a belly. And I see a picture of him in real life and he's like ripped and like has the mullet and he's nothing, like tattoos. He's like hardcore, your dad, right?
Yeah. I love that you brought up the mullet. My dad, I can't even describe him, honestly. He's such a goofball. And him coming to visit me that day in jail is what changed my life. Because up until that point, I felt like I was completely unlovable. And he's like, dude, I'm sober. I've been sober for 62 days. So you need to get your shit together and get out of here so we can do the recovery thing together.
I had this picture of him that was just not what he looks like. I know. And like, when did it become opiate addiction?
So things progressed, obviously, in addiction. It was my early 20s, and my friends and I had just broken up with this boy, and my friends like gave me this crushed up pill. I don't know how into detail we can go. I usually don't go this much into detail.
No, super. This is all we live for, this stuff.
Okay. And I didn't understand.
Hold up. I heard you on a couple shows and you didn't want to go into detail because you worry about triggering people.
Yeah, big time.
I don't think our show isn't like that. Our show, I don't think so. And if maybe it is, but like, I think it's like we share something that not every, like when you're on the Today Show, you can't talk about crushing up pills and fucking and snorting shit and like whatever. But on Dopey, you can. And it's something that our audience shares with you. So just know, it's like, imagine you're in rehab or something.
I know. And that's the thing too. I know what my triggers are. And my triggers still to this day are like hearing graphic talk about my drug of choice. Because for a second, it's like, oh, I remember. And I never want to be responsible for making anybody feel like that. But if you're cool with it, I'll just say that I was snorting it at first. And again, I felt greater than I'd ever felt in my life. And my friend was like, these cost 15 a piece. And I'm like, that's fine. Give me another one. And I started doing it for fun with my friend. And then I had been doing it like every day because again, it made me not worry about the fact that my mom was sick with cancer. It made me not worry about the fact that I was a failure and disappointed everybody who had ever known for that minute. I didn't have to feel. And then one day I was laying in bed and I felt so sick. And my friend invited me out. I'm like, I can't go, dude. For some reason, I feel like I'm dying. And she's like, oh, it's probably because you haven't done a pill today. Just do one and you'll be fine. And I went and I got one and I did one and I was instantly fine. All of that sickness went away. And that was the day I started using them because I had to in order to not feel like I was dying.
The first pill you did was Oxys or Roxy's or what?
It was Roxy's.
I never did Oxys or Roxy's. Like,
you just went straight to.
I just did heroin. Yeah.
Okay. Why waste time?
Well, I don't think I'm from New York and I don't think there were pills around and there was heroin around, you know, like nobody ever even offered me. I mean, like I'm 47 years old and I used from when I was 23 until I was 36 or something, 37. I probably used heroin and no one in my whole life ever gave me an Oxycontin ever, never once.
That's shocking to me. That's so weird. It must be like a geographical thing because at the time I started using them, they were everywhere. And the price just kept going up because doctors started cracking down on them. But if somebody had, I believe that at that point in time, if somebody had offered me I don't think I would have done it because it would have felt so extreme to me. But for some reason, starting with pills, which were prescribed to people from doctors, made it feel okay. But then the Roxy's got harder to find. And I was so desperate. And my friend's like, well, I have these Dilaudid. And I was like, great, bring them. And she's like, well, the only thing is you have to inject them. And that was always the thing that I would compare what I was doing to. Like, well, at least I don't shoot up. At least I'm not that bad. But when you're sick, you don't give a shit. And you're like, bring it, bring everything. I don't care what it is. And it was a completely different feeling and sensation. And I became addicted to the ritual of injecting myself.
So
And
you're the classic Sackler casualty. Like you're the classic casualty of big pharma and all that stuff because like, right? No, yes.
No, I hadn't been injured. There was literally no physical reason for me to use these so desperately. It was just because I felt broken inside. And I think that back then we didn't talk about depression and anxiety when I was that age. And so I never knew what was wrong with me. I just felt fucked up in the head and I thought I was crazy. And so when I took this stuff, I didn't feel that way anymore. And so
see, I like it when you talk about depression and anxiety because like I never talk about I like anxiety is like I just feel like that's me being Jewish. Like neuroses is anxiety, like it's just I'm stuck with it. And depression I just thought was like thinking. You know what I mean? If you can think, like why wouldn't you be depressed?
Oh
you
my gosh, that is a great point. I think about that all the time. I'm like, who isn't depressed and anxious with the world we live in? I think that there is a difference when like with my anxiety, I'm terrified when there's zero threat. There's zero reason. I will start a train of thought. Like I'll be looking at my kids and I'll be enjoying their presence. And then dark images of them getting badly hurt enter my brain for no reason. And I'm actually like picturing their bodies, you know, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm hyperventilating for no reason. We're safe. We're in my living room. But I think there's a difference between feeling stressed and feeling like you're in a haunted house in the middle of the day on a Wednesday when all you're doing is sitting on the couch.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It sucks so bad. I still battle with it, but I've learned different coping mechanisms that don't want, you know, end me up in jail.
What do you do? What do you, I mean, cause I have 2 kids. I have concerns, but I don't think about them in body bags and stuff. Like I get worried. My wife gets really worried that like we have a 3-year-old and she'll like, we just put her in the bed. You know, we took her out of the crib.
Yeah.
And she has her bed and she leaves the room at night. Right.
Yeah.
And so we have a baby gate on the top of the steps and I forget to lock the gate and I go to work one day and my wife texts me,
I will kill you.
She wrote, when Susan falls down the steps, her blood is going to be on your hands.
Yes. Good for your wife. I would say that same stuff because it's so true. Like I totally get your wife. I feel like we could have a conversation about this. I tell my husband all the time because he's just so nonchalant. He's like, let him play in the road with fireworks. And I'm like, honey, it's not safe. And there are in ways I feel like I'm ruining my kids. I'm definitely passing my anxiety on to them. I feel like they have way less fun when I'm around. And so that's something that I have to really work on, but it's something that I am actively working on. But so when I start to feel anxious, like I've learned breathing exercises. I have tactile things that bring me peace in the moment.
Do you use fidget toys?
I do.
No, you don't.
I do.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't carry them regularly, but I have fidget jewelry that you spin that helps me like when I'm on stage or when I'm on a show or something. I keep crystals in my pockets, which I'm not trying to say like I'm a witch or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I transfer all my nervous energy into the stone. And I'm like telling myself, like, you're safe, you're at peace, take all the nervous energy and put it into your hand. And it really helps. I love filling bowls up with Orbeez, which sounds so stupid, but I have one on Orbeez, like water beads.
I don't know what that is.
Yes, you do. You have to know what it is. They're those little balls and they're clear. And they start out really small and then you add water to them and then they get a little bigger. They're used in, okay, well, you're missing out. They're for kids.
Oh, I'll research it. Orbeez. Yeah. Okay.
I filled the bathtub with them because I was like, this is going to be so fun for the kids one time. And I put my hand in it and it felt so satisfying and amazing that I just locked the door and never let the kids play with them. It just became my thing. And everybody makes fun of me, but it really helps me calm down.
So you really do this stuff actively to work on your anxiety?
I have to. Otherwise, I will just wither away. All my hair will fall out. I will bite my nails to the knuckles. Breathing has been the biggest, easiest thing for me. And also communicating with my spouse what I need in those moments of stress, because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's like, dude, calm down, you're fine. And so I had to explain to him what it feels like and tell him I'm working on it. I need you to help me while I'm working on it. And you can help me by just hugging me and telling me everything's okay. I just want to
Nice.
feel safe in what feels like a super unsafe world.
This is why you have 4 million followers, because you're like, it's like you're out there and you're like, I can make things well. I understand it's like, I like this. And do you go to 12-step meetings or no?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, but I don't really talk about specific programs on my platform because anonymity, but also because I'm really afraid that people are going to connect me with this program and think that they have to do it or they don't have to do it based on something I say. I want people to know that there's different ways to recover and there's no set way, and you have to find what works for you and leave the rest of the shit behind. But a 12-step program and a sponsor definitely saved my life, along with higher power, and I couldn't do it without that.
Nice. Me too. I have the same thing. And we took that whole thing and we invented, we named it. You want to hear what we called it?
I'd love to.
We called it the alt recovery movement, which says there are an infinite number of ways into addiction and an infinite number of ways into recovery, and just find your path. And AA, NA are two of those paths,
Yes.
And like my sponsor was always like, don't mention you're in a fellowship because you're going to make the fellowship look bad.
Exactly.
But and the listeners, there's listeners on medicated assisted treatment. There's listeners who do Dharma recovery. There's listeners.
What's that?
Dharma recovery. It's like similar to 12-step, but it's all done through Buddhist teachings, like the Eightfold Path instead of 12 steps. I'm ready for it. When I get into it, I'm going to get Orbeez and I'm going to get a Dharma recovery book, and I'll hook you up. All right.
I would love it. It sounds amazing.
I think it will be good for your platform. I think that'll be something you'll learn, and you can teach the world about Buddha.
Well,
did you ever read the book Sid Arthur?
I did not.
Dude, that's a fucking good book. Herman Hesse. Sid Arthur. It's the story of the Buddha. It's the most beautiful book ever.
Really?
You have to read it. It's really beautiful.
I will.
I have to read it again. I haven't read it in a long time. You have to read it.
Anything that makes me feel zen and calm, and meditation works wonders for me. I have a Zen den in my house.
Zen den.
Yeah, it's like a closet under the stairs, like Harry Potter, but I decorated it with lights and crystals and essential oil diffusers, and it's where I went to decompress. But now my husband's baseball cards are in there, so I can't fit.
So it's not Zen enough because it's got all sorts of non-Zen items. When did it go from good times to like fucking you? I mean, like you described, like I was going to talk to you about, ask you like, because I knew when I did heroin, I don't know why, I knew that I would get sick. I knew that if I did it every day, I was going to get sick. I just had a belief in my head that I was going to be able to afford it every day. Like I had a good job at the time, and I thought I was going to be able to pull it off because I was stupid. Yeah. And, I believed something that wasn't true. I was practicing self-deception. Yeah. But I knew that if I did it every day, I was going to get sick. So it sounds like when you first got sick, you were like, fuck it, I don't want to feel sick again.
Yeah. So I didn't know though. Like I'm not joking. I thought meth and heroin and all of that stuff was the stuff that you didn't do because it turned you into a robber and a felon. I didn't think that could happen with pills because it wasn't as prevalent, like as well known as it is now. So when I started, I genuinely had no idea that it would end that way. I never had an idea. And even that night when I was sick, I thought, I don't think I even cared. I'm like, this is just my life now. And if I just keep it to 1 Roxy per day, I'll be fine. I remember thinking I could manage it. And then my mom got really sick and passed away at 46. And I found out I was getting a trust fund. And I was like, I'm so smart and self-aware that I know I will take this trust fund money and I will use it to die because I'll buy so many drugs. So I went to the person in charge of the trust fund and asked them to spend that money on a rehab for me. And I went to rehab in 2009 because I thought it's what I was supposed to do. I didn't want to be there, but I thought it was the right thing to do. And that was
so
when
you have the Roxy habit, you get the trust fund. And when everyone thinks you're going to spend the trust fund on Roxy's, you go to rehab.
I didn't even get the trust fund because I knew if I did. And so I thought that would be the perfect time to mention I need help. But I was defiant the whole time in rehab. I'm like, just so you guys know, I'm still going to smoke weed when I get out of here. Weed is not my problem. It's the Roxy's. And they kept telling me that I couldn't. And so I was angry. And I ended up fleeing the day of my graduation and going to buy alcohol to celebrate my graduation.
So you leave rehab and you drink the night you get out.
Oh yeah, that night.
Because you were like, you weren't believing the idea that like any mind or mood altering substance you put into your body is going to make you ultimately fucked.
Correct. I thought the pills were my problem. And which is exactly why 3 months later, when I met a police officer at a bar who wanted to date me, I was like, yes, this is great. I remember the stability that my stepdad provided for me growing up. That's exactly what I need to not ever use pills again. And so we started dating.
Did you like, was he cool?
Yeah, he was great.
His name wasn't really Elliot, I assume.
No, it wasn't. No, I changed all names and likenesses just in case hypothetically the law ever came for me, lawyers.
Well, that's the right thing to do. And he was a cop, and you were living. It was one of my favorite parts of the book was the flashbacks to time, and you're living with this stoner dude, and you're getting high with the roommate, and he doesn't. The boyfriend, the police officer, doesn't know that you're a stoner at all. Or you told him he went to rehab, though, right?
Yeah, I told him. One night I drunkenly confessed to him that I had a problem with pills in the past, but I was better now. And he said, that's the past. I accept you for who you are today. And as you know, you become a really good bullshitter when you're using. And so every single word out of my mouth was a lie. And I relapsed on pills while we were together. And because turns out addiction doesn't really care who you're dating.
Here, I want to read some of your book, like one of my favorite parts of your book. Do you want me to read it to you so the Dopey Nation can hear what a brilliant writer you are?
That's very kind. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Here we go.
You're right. I didn't graduate high school, by the way, so I'm not that brilliant.
All right. Here we go. All right. Hold on.
No spoilers, though.
It's a big one. No, there's not. You just told the story. I'm just going to read it.
Okay.
What spoiler? What spoiler could we?
I don't know.
There's no spoilers in that book. You're gonna say it on the show anyway. Is there a spoiler? What can't you say on the show?
Maybe you're just gonna have to get the book. No, I'm just kidding. I'm an open book, and so I've told my story a million times. So there's no point in buying the book. I'll just tell you.
Yeah, are you kidding? But they should buy the book anyway, because the book. I'm gonna say this: you have a dazzling voice, an engaging voice. You open that book, and I read it in like a day. I read it on my commute. I ride the Long Island Railroad every day. And I was like, let's see what this book is like. And I was like halfway done on my way in. And I think I finished it the next day.
That's awesome.
But then I was really pissed at you because we were scheduled an interview. And then the interview was like 7 weeks later. And my brain is like Swiss cheese. So
I get it.
And then I lost the book. I couldn't find the book. So I had
burned it when you were mad at me.
No, I put it on I put it on the shelf and it disappeared. And I was like, fuck. But you can get the book on the computer on PDF. So I re-got it on the PDF. I got the book twice.
What do you mean you can get it on the PDF? Like a bootleg version?
Yes.
Okay, don't admit that. What is wrong with you?
Spoiler alert. All right, here we go. And this might be too long of a section. So let's just bear with me. Here we go. Okay. Shut the fuck up, I said, chucking a pillow at him as he left. It bounced off the door and this is just to set the scene. This is Tiffany with her stoner boyfriend in the house.
My boyfriend.
All right, my bad. With her stoner roommate, which is always bad to be a drug addict with the stoner roommate. And he seems like he was probably a drug addict too, though, right?
It was never. I don't know. There's no telling. I think he could control it. He was just high all the time. I don't even know who he really was as a person.
In my mind, I picture like a James Franco type.
No, blonde hair, weaselly face.
Not the handsome James Franco, Brad Pitt style that I imagine.
No way.
In the movie, though, I think a young Brad Pitt as the stoner. I would like it.
As long as I can play his lover.
Okay, here we go.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
They're going to play you. Anyway, here we go. Shut the fuck up, I said, chucking a pillow at him as he left. It bounced off the door as he shut it behind him. I decided to call my boyfriend before I melted into the couch in a hazy fog. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. It rang and rang and rang. I was relieved when the voicemail picked up, and I quickly hung up, not wanting to leave the evidence of my current state on a recording. Alrighty then, I tried. I thought as I stood up from the couch. Alrighty then, I tried. I thought as I stood up from the couch. I shut all the lights off, locked the front door, and headed to grab some buds out of Brandon's secret stash. I flipped his bedroom lights on and glanced around at his pigsty of a room. Cigarette ashes and empty fast food wrappers littered the floor. I stepped over a pair of dirty boxers and pulled the top drawer of his oak dresser opened. Knives and random objects began thumping around in the drawer as I rifled through to locate the bag. Where the fuck was this thing? Suddenly, my fingers hit something hard and plastic. It definitely wasn't a bag. I began to sweat as my knuckles turned white from grasping the tube so hard. I gave it a shake, and my suspicions were confirmed. Pills rattled inside the bottle as I pulled it out from under the socks to get a better look. I should have let go and run out of the room, but curiosity had gotten the best of me. I looked at the label and didn't recognize the name of the person they were prescribed to, but I recognized the drug immediately. They were Oxy 80s. Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
That's where it gets good. One of the most powerful pills one could get. One pill costs like $40. What the fuck was he doing with these? My palms were clammy around the bottle, but I couldn't let go. My heart was wrapping the inside of my rib cage, and I began salivating. It felt like I was possessed. This is a good relapse passage, just so you know. Are you feeling it? Are you on the edge of your
I am feeling it. It's so weird to hear it because I remember the moment.
Put them back, you fucking idiot. You are clean. You got clean for your mother. She is watching you right now. Don't do this, I said to myself. There was an inner battle going on in my mind between my addiction and myself. Turmoil and angst swarmed around me inside like bees. Suddenly, and before I had time to think, I threw the bottle into the drawer and left the room. I didn't even bother closing the drawer. I had to get out of there. I wasn't going to let my addiction win this time. I had come so far and was not about to give up now. I made it 2 steps out of the bedroom when suddenly my mind was hijacked. A dark force took over the helm, and I was merely a helpless bystander. I watched from somewhere far away as my body turned around and my legs began moving toward the dresser before my brain could process what was happening. Stop, I yelled out loud to myself. No, the tears began streaming down my face. I couldn't stop what was happening. I was powerless. The familiar pop of the lid being opened was the most rewarding and heartbreaking sound I'd ever heard. I knew what came next. I shook a pill into the palm of my hand and returned the bottle to its resting place. A few moments later, I was staring down at the white line in front of me. It looked like powdered snow. I had licked the coating off the Oxy and smashed it to smithereens without a single thought. It was mechanical. I'd done it so many times that it was programmed into my mind. I could keep reading, but I have to. I'm sorry. Without hesitation, I placed the rolled up dollar bill in my nose, leaned down, and snorted deeply. The powder coated the back of my throat as the familiar burn in my nose greeted me like an old friend. I shoved the rolled up bill into my bra just as my brain turned to jello, and the warm sensation of liquid relaxation began flowing through my veins. Holy shit, I missed this feeling. Fuck. Why would anyone voluntarily stop taking these things? It was as though I were being wrapped in a warm hug, a hug I couldn't receive from anyone else. A hug I couldn't receive from anyone else. That's relapse. That is, hold on here. That's great.
I don't know. Thank you. It was the shittiest moment of my life where I'm just kidding. My palms are sweating right now for some reason.
It fucked you up.
I don't see, is my face red? I don't see how that could not be triggering for someone listening.
Well, listen, this is the thing. I think the bottom line is this. If drugs could work, if you could take drugs and be happy and have a good life, you'd still be doing it. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You stop because it's misery. And anybody who's listening, listen, anybody who's having a moment, it's not going to work out. She fucking went to jail. It went terrible for her. She tried to kill herself.
Yes, let's play the tape all the way through.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't work.
Yeah, spoiler alert. That amazing few seconds of feeling ended up in me with no clothes on in suicide watch trying to kill myself.
I have the quote from there too, but we'll get to that one. We'll get there. That's my other quote I have.
Wow.
The point is, like, in those moments, like, and it's so funny, like the different, because like you said, when you left treatment, you thought you could drink and you thought you could smoke weed. A long time ago, I was talking with a friend, actually Chris, who I'd done the show with for years, about, you know, there's so many different kind of takes of recovery, and people who can smoke weed or people who can drink or people who could, whatever, you know, there are all these different paths. For me, if I drop the force field and let one substance in, I'm fucked. You know, I don't have the chance to like resist the other ones. So like, and I also know that in my relapses, and I don't think I ever relapsed because I don't think I ever had sobriety. I think I was just always kind of going from one thing to the next.
Right.
But in a moment like that, I never would have deprived myself. You know what I mean? I would do exactly what you did and felt compelled, right?
Yeah. Because at that time I had no real recovery under my belt. I had no real coping mechanisms to reach for in those moments. Now, if I stumbled upon something like that, it would be a completely different story. I know exactly what I would do. But back then I had no weapons. I had no force field, so to speak. And so I really like that you said that if I drop my force field and let one in, that I'm screwed. I've never heard that before. And that's such an amazing way to put it, because I'm the same way. I can't do anything.
Yeah. I don't even, I eat too much ice cream.
If we're going to talk about addiction, food addiction and ice cream, I feel those addictive feelings when it comes to ice cream. Like if the idea of ice cream pops in my head, I have to friggin' have it. I don't care if I have to walk to the store barefoot. Like I need it. And it's so, I'm like, oh my God, this is addict behavior, but at least it's not crack. So it's fine. Like that's how I justify it. But
where I really get addicty is where I start eating it and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to stop. I'm not stopping until it's gone. Like that's where the real addict comes out. But in I think like the most important thing, and I really do appreciate your spirit. Like you're like, oh, that's going to be triggery. And it is triggery, but it's important that exists because people like us, you know, like we get into situations like that and we fall, right? Sometimes, and sometimes we don't. And I think it's important to have both stories out there, you know? Now there's a thing in your book that there's only one thing in your book that I really struggle with. Okay.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay. Now, Tiffany, from there, like she went berserk, right? Doing fucking pills. Like you went berserk and you had the boyfriend who is the cop and and I worked in restaurants my whole life too. Like this whole run, I was a waiter like the whole time. So I could relate to like a lot of the story. The one piece that I cannot relate to, and I want you to clarify this for me, because it's also just the juiciest thing to me.
I know where you're going.
She's driving to get some fucking drugs, right? And the car breaks down and she doesn't want to call the police officer boyfriend. So she calls an ex-boyfriend who happens to be a drug dealer, and he comes and helps you out. And then he gives you a briefcase full of drugs. Mm-hmm. How could that be a true story?
I know. So he wasn't my ex-boyfriend. He was my ex buddy with benefits.
Yes.
And it's true. Okay. And this guy, I don't know, I can't remember if I mentioned it in the book, but this guy, I'm going to try really hard not to say his real name while I'm recounting this.
I think in the book, his name was Josh.
Okay. We'll call him Josh then. He is unlike any human being that I've ever met in my life. He was born rich. And so he has his pilot license. He went to law school. He has all these things, and he had cabinets full of drugs. And he had always been trying to encourage me to help him be one of his sellers. He had like people under him who would go out and sell and report back, but I had never done it because I never thought that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze to me. The $4 extra here and there was never worth it to me. But I was just so desperate at this point that I was down, but I ended up doing all of the supply just like I thought I would. And that's when things got a little crazy.
Now I'm also when I hear briefcase full of drugs, like, you know, it tickles my frontal lobe or my hypothalamus or something in my brain is what's in there? What drugs? What did he have? Does he have ether, DMT? What he got in there?
No, it was cocaine and pills and weed.
Okay.
And I had never even, like, I used to do cocaine just for fun, just whatever. But I was sitting in my house by myself and I was bored and I was like, I could just take a little bit. He would never know. And then I just kept doing that. And then with the pills, I would always come up with excuses like, I'm just going to do this pill and then I'll make enough money at work to replace it. But it never happens. Same with the pawn shops. It just never happens. You always think that there's going to be a way out of this situation. And I think you justify it so hard and convince yourself that anything is possible when you're sick. And that's what I did through that whole thing.
Do you think he was evil?
I think he is still. I am terrified. Part of me is terrified that he's read this or somebody's told him like, hey, this sounds a lot like you. And I don't think this is in the book. I actually don't even know if I should mention this. Now that I'm thinking about it, it makes me an accessory a little bit, possibly. But anyway, I remember one day I was at his house and he came home and he had a bulletproof vest on and a gun. And he said, I just shot 3 people.
Oh, yeah.
Is it not? That's not that. I can't remember if I put it or not. But I remember.
No, you didn't. No, I wasn't.
What the heck are you talking about? And I guess there was like a drug deal gone bad and he had shot at the side of the car. We didn't know if any of them died. I ended up bringing it up to my cop ex-boyfriend and saying, hey, by the way, are there any unsolved murders that involve shooting from this month on this year? Because I think I know who did it. Like I was ready to admit it all, but it was never found. And I don't even know if it was true, but he's unlike anybody I've ever met. And he's still up to his old ways because I do occasionally stalk him on Facebook just to see if anything's changed.
And nothing. I mean, the thing that really bothers me about it is just like, I've been in situations like where every time a drug dealer has ever fronted me drugs to sell, I've done them every time. Like it's never happened that like I actually sell drugs. I mean, except before I was addicted, like I used to sell acid in college and stuff.
Yeah.
And weed. Even with weed, it was hard for me to keep up with it because I'd always smoke it and I never really made money.
But I'd never done that. So I guess I was so desperate that I thought maybe this would be.
Sure. I mean, him though. I mean, he knew you're a fucking opiate addict, but like he wanted to put you in that situation is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I thought there was a point when I said he was my best friend and I'll even have Facebook memories come up and with him in them. And I remember just thinking we were such great friends, but in hindsight, now that I know the definition of a true friend, we never were friends. He used me and I used him.
Well, it's funny. I was texting with a listener of the show and he was talking about a relationship he has with an old heroin dealer. And I was thinking about just how, those relationships are so weird between drug addicts and drug dealers. And sometimes they feel like they're your best friend or their father figure or they're, you know what I mean? But it's very hard to have a friendship when you're high. Like it's very hard to have a friendship when you're in active addiction. Yeah.
Even my best friend, who was a female, I would screw her over in a second. If our dealer was like, I have 3 left and I knew she wanted to go and get some, I'd be like, I'm on my way to her and get them.
Totally.
There's no loyalty when you're using.
Because you're a fucking addict. I have this stupid light on and I look too bright, right? Do I look too bright?
Think you look too bright. You look normal bright. It's me. One side of your face is brighter, but
I know. I'm not the pro. You have a nice even lighting. Nice evenly. Yeah. You're evenly lit.
I didn't brush my hair today.
It looks very brushed.
Feel any better?
Looks very brushed. So my point is you got put in a bad situation. You know what I mean? And like there was no winning in that situation. It's like
I had a choice in all of these situations. I always had a choice, but at the time it felt like I didn't have a choice. That desperation, like when your desperation grows so much, your morals drop and you just don't care. And there was so many things during that time that I couldn't see the future. The future was dark. I was just living for the moment. and whatever I had to do to get out of whatever situation I happened to put myself in.
And that's when you tried Dilaudid. That's when you started shooting. That's when it was like, how long were you shooting?
I was probably 5 months, 6 months before I got arrested. It did not take long. It felt like much longer because I was living in the police officer's house and I was hiding my scars. And I don't know, I thought nobody knew. And of course, once I got clean, all of my friends and family members were like, we knew, we just didn't want to say anything because we didn't want to push you away. And I get that.
He didn't know, right? He didn't know.
So here's what happened. Here's what I think. Because he had found my paraphernalia. And of course, because I was a piece of shit loser, I blamed it on my sick mother. I'm like, oh, that must be left over from when my mom was sick and had to give herself medicine. Like, just pulling this shit out of my ass. Excuse my mouth. I never cuss like this. I'm sorry. But I think that when you love somebody so much, you ignore the signs and the red flags because you so desperately don't want it to be true. And I like to think I was also, like, in hindsight, I thought I was such a good liar. And I thought that I would start lies on a Wednesday because I knew I would need it on a Saturday. I was lying before the lie became a lie just so I could be like, oh, remember I told you about that thing on Wednesday? It's happening now. And, but I think that love had a lot to do with it. He was truly, to this day, probably the greatest person that I've ever met in my life. He was truly kind. The minute his feet hit the ground in the morning, his life goal was to make me happy. And I was such a piece of shit. I took that and I squandered it and I took advantage of it.
You were a using drug addict,
Yeah.
you know? So like you were a using drug addict and probably, and I'm not, you know, I'm no psychologist or I don't, you know, but probably you couldn't handle the kind of guy that would live to make you happy. Like that probably is not the kind of thing that like computes.
Right. At the time I didn't like it. I was like, Can you just yell at me? Can you just like give me something? I remember I didn't like it, but because of that, I feel incapable of accepting that kind of love. Also, I felt guilty receiving that kind of love because I didn't deserve it in my mind. And so I would push it away. And I stayed with him for so long because I knew that if I told him the truth about like the monster that I actually was at the time, that I would lose everything. I would lose the house we were living in. I would lose him. I would lose respect. I would lose the puppy, which for some reason was such a big deal at the time. I thought that when he found out the truth about my crimes, that he would be like, dang, Tiffany, I can't believe you did that. Let's get you to rehab. But I was not expecting his police sergeant to find out before him.
No, but you know what it is? I think because he believed the lie, you believed some of the lie. And the second that he finds out, it's true. You know what I mean? Like you were so good at lying and you were so invested in the story that as soon as it was out, your fantasy of being like this policeman's girlfriend who's straight and drinks sometimes is over. And the truth comes out. And then like, you know, the craziest thing, obviously, this is the spoiler, but we have to, you know, how can we not talk about it? Because it's like very juicy. I'm always a sucker for briefcases full of drugs. But when you owed the dealer so much money, right? That's when the shit went down, right?
The desperation. Yeah. That's when it kicked in because I was so afraid that he would find out. And I was so afraid that all the truth about who I was would come to fruition. And it's looking back on it now, I can see that it was the universe's way of being like, it's over, bitch. Because I would have kept going on until I died. But I didn't expect things to go down the way they did. And to be honest with you, I didn't really care because I was living in the moment and I was just trying to get myself out of this hole that I had dug. And that's the thing about my story is it's so outlandish, but I think that anybody who has done drugs and lived that lifestyle knows that our stories sound fucking outlandish and like something from a movie. And that's because the desperation will make you do shit that no sane, normal thinking person would do.
we're willing to go to lengths and means to do anything to make sure we can stay high. The
Yeah.
only reason it went so bad for you is because your boyfriend was a cop and you stole his guns and badge. That's why it went so bad for it's like we all steal from our families and our girlfriends and our parents and our grandparents. And it's so funny to me also because I just watched you on the Today Show and it's like they're sitting there all dressed and they're wearing pants. I mean, I might not be wearing pants, but on the Today Show, they're wearing pants. And it's like you having to reveal the stuff that you did. It's like the fucking worst thing that ever could have happened. And I mean, like, that's what we do. You know what I mean? It just so happened that he was a cop and it was his gun, and the crime aspect of putting a law officer's weapon in the hands of a drug dealer, it becomes very salacious, right? But in reality, it's like just what you just said. It's just what we do to make sure we can stay well.
Yep. And that's what it was, is to stay well. I felt that pain of withdrawal is something that was unfathomable. Anytime I thought about having to endure that, even for 5 minutes, I would have cut off my arm. I would have stepped on my mother's neck. I would have done anything to not have to feel that. It's so painful. And knowing that there's this magical pill that exists and all you have to do is take it and you're fine. It became the center of my universe.
That's the thing. It's like, that's the thing about withdrawal. It's not the sickness. It's that all you need is the drug. And that's also one of the greatest, most magical things of being an opiate addict. It's like you're dying and then all of a sudden you have this thing and you're the greatest you've ever been. It's like crazy. It's a crazy thing. I had COVID, right? I had COVID right in the beginning and it felt identical to kicking. It was so much like kicking, except I wasn't thinking like about copping. Like I put a blanket around me. I watched some movies. I cried. I enjoyed it. Like that. I'm fucked up. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting sick at COVID because I knew I wasn't going to go cop. And I had a chance to not work for a few days. You know what I mean? But the misery of withdrawal is that there's a solution.
Yes. And when you combine the mental anguish with the physical pain, it felt unbearable to me. Like I'm sitting on the floor, like sweating and kicking around. And I'm like, I can't believe I've done this to myself. I've gotten myself here. I can't believe that I have to continue living in this broken body. It is up to me to continue feeding my body what it needs in order to function in this fucked up world. And I can't do it. And it was so, I'm so grateful that I never.
That it's over. Right. Exactly. And the thought that I had a lot during my runs was, and my runs was like protracted. It would just go and go and go and go. And I would go to detox and I would get out of detox and I would go and go and go and go. And the thing that would always play out in my head was I can't afford to stay high. You know what I mean? Like I'm never going to be able to do this. It's not possible, you know? And you got stopped because your boyfriend went to his sergeant.
His sergeant went to him, actually, sadly.
What's the story?
Yeah. Once the burglary, quote unquote, occurred at our home, they had to investigate. And I was probably acting suspicious because I was high as a kite when they were interviewing me about burglary. And so for some reason, somebody looked up my name in the pawn searches for my town, looked up my name. And of course, it came up with everything that I had pawned. And so they printed it all out, including photos of me standing there pawning it, and went to him and said, did you know that your girlfriend was doing all this? And he said, no. And they said, we have no choice but to arrest her. And so then they all came to my house and pulled me out of bed and arrested me. If I had just gone to him and told him I had a problem, I probably never would have gotten arrested. But I just couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. So he had no choice. I mean, he was crying when he woke me up out of bed. And he just said, the detectives want to talk to you. And I said, I talked to them last night. And he said, you got to go out there. And then the detective came in the bedroom and was like, get out here now. And that was when I knew that it wasn't just to interview me, that I was caught.
Right. Right. And it's like, it's just so funny when we go over the details and we say, well, if this had happened, then this would have happened. But in your situation and in my situation, if any of those things hadn't happened, you wouldn't have your kids.
Oh yeah, I know.
Like, it's like, I wouldn't have my kids. It's like, and that's deep. You know what I mean? It's like, you go over it like, oh, if only I had just copped to my boyfriend. But if you hadn't gone the exact path you went, wound up in jail, you would not have the life that you have right now. And it's pretty incredible. And then you had to go to jail. And that's when the shit, and then you had to kick in jail.
Ugh. I can't figure out if that's better or worse, to be honest with you, because I feel like knowing that I didn't have the option to go get it made it somehow more doable.
Yeah. Every time I go away, every time I ever went away to kick, it was infinitely easier than any time I couldn't kick it. I couldn't do it. Like I never had to kick in jail. I would do like a night in jail. And I would never did time. You know, I just did a night and then I'd get out and cop or whatever. And that happened twice. So I don't want to brag that I've done it so many times. I went to jail twice for 2 nights. But like whenever I went to detox, I also got medicated. You didn't get medicated in jail, but I think being separated from the possibility makes it psychologically different.
It does. Yeah, I felt that. And of course, there's ways, you know, in the general population, when you have people coming in that you could get drugs if you wanted. But by then, I had been so long that I never partook in any of that. But yeah, it was the most humiliating experience of my life, though, was detoxing and suicide watch. Because during the detox, it was so painful that I felt like I didn't have a choice. I had to die. I wanted to die more than anything. I had to.
Can I read the death passage from the book?
Yeah, if you want, if your listeners are tired of a dumb story.
No, are you kidding me? All right. I remained, and this is Tiffany kicking in jail.
It's very graphic. Warning. I don't know if you need it. Sorry.
Huh? You don't know what?
I don't know if they need a warning, but I'm just warning that it's graphic.
Spoiler alert. It's very graphic. Here we go. I remained in bed for most of the day. My body was in so much pain from the withdrawal that I was finding it hard to breathe. I watched through the bars of my cell as women were running around laughing and having a good time. How the fuck could they laugh at a time like this? Did they not realize they were in jail? A lot of them seemed happy. I didn't think I'd ever be happy again. Depression and despair weighed down on me so heavily that I felt paralyzed. I realized that I was going to spend a very long time in jail. And even when I did get out, I was going to spend the rest of my life being despised by everyone. And I would certainly never be respected again. Dark thoughts of what my future would look like came crashing into my mind. I would be homeless. No one would ever want to love a horrible person like me, especially after they found out what I did to my last boyfriend. Living with the choices I had made suddenly became impossible to imagine. I didn't have it in me to keep going. I suddenly wanted out. Suddenly was only said the second time. I added it the first time by mistake. You didn't say suddenly twice. The anticipation of the unexpected, the waiting and worrying, I just couldn't do it. I had already been locked up for what seemed like a lifetime, and I hadn't even learned what my charges were. I wasn't cut out to be an adult. I wasn't meant to live a full life. I am a junkie loser, I thought, and that's all I'm ever going to be. I have no choice. There is no other way. Tonight, after everyone falls asleep, I'm going to kill myself.
I tried.
How did you try? You tied the sheet around your neck?
Yeah. And I tied it to the bed and I sat down, and I had always heard that your body naturally fights against that, but I didn't feel any of that. I just started losing consciousness, I guess is what you call it. And I started getting tunnel vision and started blacking out. And when I saw light, I thought that was it. And I was so stoked. I'm like, yes, let's go. Heaven, here I come. I don't have to deal with life anymore. And it's just the flashlights of the patrol.
Well, thank God. Thank God you survived it.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the book is in jail, and it's like fun, girly action in jail. Some of it is fun, girly action in jail. Some of it is misery. It's just, you know, it is a great depiction of your experience. How long do you think the suicidal thoughts stayed around?
The whole time I was in suicide watch for days.
How long was it?
I was in suicide watch for 5 or 6 days, I think. And it was horrible. Suicide watch is just these glass doors all around you, like glass windows, so that they can peek in and make sure that you're not trying to do anything.
Like Oz.
I never watched that show. Should I?
Yeah. Listen, Oz, it's one of the cheesiest shows ever. That was a show that I did heroin every second of while I watched it. And I'm like, even just talking about it makes me want to watch it. The show is not good. First of all, it's not good, but there's something incredibly seductive about it and fun. I reckon if you feel like your program is locked in and you don't mind watching something pretty campy and that will definitely remind you of your experience as a drug addict, I highly recommend watching Oz.
Okay, I'll look into it.
It sucks though, but I really like it. It's not good.
I love watching shitty shows.
And you have to watch Oz. You have to. And next time you come on Dopey, you could talk about Oz. That would be great. I'd love that. I would really like that. I would. Now, so but it passed, and you managed to and they gave you the option in jail of you either like get out on long probation or you go to rehab, right?
And still get out on long probation. I had 3 years regardless. But yeah, one of the options was to do 2 more months in jail and then probation. Or I'm sorry, do 4 more months in jail and probation, or do 2 more months of jail, 6 months live in treatment, and then 3 years probation. And everybody there was like, girl, get out of here and be free. But I knew that I'd end up right back here. There. I guess I'm like there in my head, but I'd end up right back there if I didn't go and get help, because my brain was broken and it was going to be with me the whole time. So I had to go take it to somebody who knew how to fix it. And that's what rehab did for me. This time I wanted it. I wasn't just there because I felt like I was supposed to be.
And so many times people go to rehab or go to jail and they don't find their bottom. And we had talked about your dad. That was the bottom. That was the turning point.
I think the turning point that made me want to get help was knowing that somebody out there still loved me despite the shit that I did. Because prior to that, I didn't want to live because I knew that nobody would ever love me again. And I would have to spend the rest of my life fighting to get somebody to respect me. And I didn't have the energy or the willingness to do that. But when my dad said, dude, there's nothing you could do that could change my mind about you. I will always love you. And I have faith in you. And I know you can do this. I was like, at least one person out there who's known me since birth knows that deep down I'm a good person. And if that person can believe in me, I can believe in myself for a little bit.
Nice. And there were lots of opportunities to get high in jail. I don't remember, did you ever get high in jail?
No.
So the last time you got high was when?
November 26th. Technically late of November 25th of 2012, but I was arrested the next morning, but I probably still had drugs in my system. So I say.
So you've never gotten high since then?
No.
Oh, that's pretty, hold on.
Thank you.
That's pretty great. That's pretty. And then my favorite part of the story, and it's so quick in the book, but it's obviously like the whole juggling the Jenkins universe, is that in Halfway, Tiffany meets some junkie in another halfway house and they go and fuck and have a kid.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah, we did that.
And it worked out. That's amazing. How did you meet him? Tell the romance.
Okay, first of all, we're not going to call it a romance. He was graduating rehab and giving his commencement speech.
Wait, where's their commencement? I've been to rehab many times. No one asked me to speak. They were just like,
this was the Salvation Army.
Nice. So how does that work? Describe this to me.
A family member of mine was in the program that he was in. And I had already been in the halfway house and graduated from my rehab. So I was allowed to go to these meetings in the Salvation Army. And I was going to watch my loved one graduate. And it just so happened that this super hot dude was also graduating. And he had been in love with my sister, of course, because she's beautiful. But our family member was like trying to hook my sister up with him. And so I would make fun of her and be like, there's your boyfriend. Anyway, when he got up to give his commencement speech, the way that he talked about his higher power and his family and his hope for the future, it like did something to me. I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And so I told her, you better get on that or I'm going to pounce on him like a puma. And
Wait, hold up. Who were you seeing? Who was graduating? Who was the loved one?
So in the book, I said it was someone else, but it was my dad's girlfriend.
Okay. So you went to see your dad's girlfriend graduate. This dude, this heavenly, beautiful man, starts kicking higher power rap, and it goes right into him. And
I was like, he's got 4 months clean. This is going to be perfect. What could go wrong? And then, as fate would have it, he ended up in a halfway house 1 street over from mine. So that night of his commencement, I told my dad's girlfriend, I said, put a good word. And he sent me a friend request on Facebook that night. And we started talking, and we would walk and meet up at dumpsters because we didn't have a car or a job or anything. And we would just hang out and go to meetings together. And I got an overnight pass one night, and he put a baby in.
Where did it happen?
Like physically in his bedroom.
In the halfway house.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then when did you find out you were pregnant?
It was super early, actually. I was only a couple of weeks pregnant. I started feeling weird, dude. Something was off. And I borrowed $1 from my roommate and walked to the dollar store and got a pregnancy test. And I took it and it was positive. And I was like, this is not good because I had like barely a year yet when I found out. And I was living in a halfway house. I had no car, no job, and neither did he. But I had a really good feeling that it was going to work out. And now he's in the kitchen. We've been married for 7 years. We have 3 kids. Amazing. Technically 2. One of them he had before he met me.
That's a kid in your house. You have 3.
Yeah, I count her. But in case mathematically anybody was doing the math, I had to explain. But yeah, our youngest just started kindergarten a couple of days ago. Our son, our first baby together, was born on my birthday. And then when he was 6 months old, I found out I was pregnant again. And we just started building our life slowly but surely. We went from living in separate halfway houses to living into an apartment together, and then we're renting a home together. And then we just bought our first house this past year.
Do you want me to hit the applause thing? Because I
feel like I deserve it. Damn it. No, I'm just kidding.
There you go. That's honestly, awesome.
Though, it wasn't. I could never have done it alone. I can't take any credit. It was people in recovery who were showing me the way and who were showing up for me when I felt like giving up, and who were there when I reached out to them. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Well, I love that. And like, to be totally transparent, I've had my share. I had sex in a halfway house, but don't tell anybody.
Okay. It's our secret.
But we didn't stay together. You know what I mean? So my question, and not even close. My question is, you're very public. Your story is out there, 4 million people, and YouTube and Facebook and everything. How often do you hear from people who married their halfway house sweetheart? Like, how often do you hear that story?
I mean, I've heard it before. I don't recommend it, but I do have friends who met in rehab and are married with kids now. And it's because their goals and we're aligned and they work together. And I think that the most important thing is figuring yourself out, because at that time, I remember thinking when we started talking, like, I have 10 months clean. I've got a great foundation of recovery. He is just a bonus to my life. He's not required. And I know where I'm going with this. And I think that the biggest part is making sure that you're all right with yourself, because if you're looking to fill this void with this other person, chances are it's not going to work out. And I think we were both he should have run away. Honestly.
Well, you both should have run, but that, things happen the way they happen for, there's a million reasons why things don't work or why they do. And we have some listeners, there's a couple that met through Dopey Nation Zoom. There's a Dopey romance out there. And I get emails from people who met their wives in rehab. I don't think I ever heard I think you met Jessica Kent. Did you meet Jessica Kent?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she had the baby in jail.
Yeah.
Which is much worse than your situation.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
Right. I'm sure you could. I mean, it's fucked up. It's like, but it's a beautiful life. You have a beautiful life. Mm-hmm. I'm curious. Basically, you were a non-professional high school dropout. Mm-hmm. And when you're pregnant and you're having your first couple kids, Like I've heard you talk about like just posting on Facebook and shit, whatever. Like when did it, like the mission, the vision of juggling the Jenkins hit you? Like how did it happen?
I have been really, like, the reception when I put some personal shit out there was unbelievable. The more personal.
How did you put it out the first time?
Blogs in
What was
writing.
the format? It was like you had a website, but what made you do that?
Well, it was just me and the kids, and I was super depressed after I had my daughter. I was part of depression. I felt lonely. I would look on the internet. Everybody looked like they had their shit together, and they had these families, and they looked so happy. And I didn't want to have my children anymore. I wanted to run out of the house and leave them there. I didn't want to be a mom, and I was like, I'm failing. And I reached out for help from a doctor. I'm like, is it normal to despise your kids and resent them for existing?
Wow.
And he said, no, you've got something going on. And so I started getting treatment for that. And then I just vented about it on this WordPress site. I started it. And I was like, I'm just going to collect my stories here. And I started sharing them. And I started sharing about addiction. And people were like, me too, dude. Thanks for talking about it. And I decided to start a series called 120 Days In about my time in jail, just in case anybody was like on the fence about whether or not jail was right for them. If they were thinking like, I wonder what goes on in jail. I wanted to tell people about my experience. And this lady was like, I am so invested every week to find out what happens next. I wish that I could send these stories to my son who's in jail. And that was when I was like, I need to make this a book. And so I took everything off the website. I finished writing the story. I Googled how to self-publish a book, and I did it. In the first year, it sold like 50,000 copies or something. And it was just, there was typos in the book. Character names changed from one page to the next. Like I had no effing clue what I was doing, but I did it anyway. And Penguin Random House caught wind of my book, and they were like, let us help you with these typos and we'll republish it. And now it's in bookstores and it's being sent to jails and rehabs all over the place. And it's, I guess it's just because like, instead of doing what I normally do, which is that's way too hard. I can't do that. It'll never work out. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to try. And I stepped outside my comfort zone and everything. It was amazing. And I think it's,
you're like my hero. Do you know that? You're like my fucking hero. I'm trying to write a book. Like I'm working on a book. Okay.
Awesome.
Working title, The Last Jewish Waiter. Working title.
Love it.
I'm working on a YouTube channel because I want to be like you. You're my new hero.
Oh my gosh, take me down from the pedestal because I am going to disappoint you.
You can't.
I think that's the point though, is that I dropped out of high school. I, at one point, tried to die. Like I had nothing to offer the world. And if somebody like me is able to live a life after drugs and try all this cool shit that they never would have gotten a chance to if they had been successful in their own self-sabotage attempts, that anybody can do.
Absolutely.
So true.
And more importantly, like we went to the end of the world. We almost died. Misery, depravity, depression, nothing good coming. And then all of a sudden you're not doing that shit. And it's like, you can make things and you can create things that bring you joy, you can create things that bring me joy, and we can sit here and none of it could have happened if you kept smoking weed or doing oxys or shooting Dilaudid or whatever the case may be, and it's amazing. I think, I love your story. Now I have another question.
Okay.
What came first, the book or the vlog?
So videos also, I think I've always loved comedy. I've always considered myself to be a goofball. And so I think it was simultaneous. I started juggling the Jenkins in 2017 and I just made some silly videos while writing out. And the book, there had been a couple of videos released at the time of the book, but I think it was a culmination of the two. People would find my funny videos online and be like, oh my gosh, she's so hilarious. I'm going to follow her. And then they get to my page and find out that I'm a recovering drug addict. And they're like, wait a minute, this does not look like what I think of when I think of a drug addict. And so that's when I slap them with the truth. And I'm like, so keep hope alive, because if you like me, then you have to know that there's hope for your life.
That's the rope-a-dope, and you have balls though. Like when Chris and I started the show, we didn't have balls. We were totally in an in anonymity. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I still like, I'm not so public with people that aren't into Dopey. You know, in the Dopey world, pretty much everybody knows who I am, whatever. But in my world, I'm in my own personal sphere, like at work, I tell everybody I'm a drug addict in recovery. I don't mind. But in my friend world, I don't talk about it. You know, I mean, that's not even true. Only on social media. I do not publicize being an addict on social media.
Like on your personal page?
Yeah.
Or,
I don't.
Well, you don't have to. If you
I know I don't, but I like that you had balls and it worked.
Well, the only reason I even had those balls is because of the reception that I received. I was shocked at the amount of people who accepted me and were like, that's amazing. You're awesome. Thank you for telling me.
But that's the courage paying off. Here, I want you to read. Can I send you an email really fast and you can read it? Okay, hold on. Stand by. Did you have fun on the show?
I did. It felt like I was just a conversation. I've never had anyone read parts of my book before.
How did that feel? Did that make you feel like a real author?
It was an experience. It did. It made me feel, I don't know how it made me feel. It was like,
oh, fuck. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to do the fucking BetterHelp ad. God fucking damn it. I always forget.
Do it. Just do it now. Can you put it in later?
We'll do it at the end, but I always forget the BetterHelp ad. Sorry, my bad.
Okay.
Here we go. Tiffany Jenkins notes. Okay. Hold on. Here we go. That didn't work. Hold on. What the fuck is that? All right. Okay. I think it's sent.
To the email that we were using before?
To Juggling the Jenkins.
I was sure I sent it. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay. Now, before you read it, I want to tell you this note is from a long-time Dopey listener named Joey Pepper, who I often would call Joey Pepper. And Joey Pepper listened when me and Chris did the show. He would like make fun of Chris. He sent in a Dopey theme song. Like he was one of the true blue original dopes. He sent me Dopey decals, like really well-made Dopey decals that I put around New York. And then he disappeared. And then there's another Dopey guy who wrote a song and Joey Pepper's in the song. So out of no place, Joey Pepper emerged and sent this email.
Whoa. And you want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay. Dave, wow. I'm loving the podcast. I stopped listening a while back. Not because the show was bad, but because I changed jobs and wasn't able to listen. But I'm fucking back. I started with the most recent and I'm going backwards till I get to where I left off. WTF, the Dopey Nation is the shit. I joined a couple of days ago, the Facebook group. I'm joining my first Dopey Zoom meeting in a little while. Today is day one of my recovery. I never gave my recovery a chance. I've never been to a meeting, a detox, a treatment center, sober living, nothing but jail. Jail was the only treatment I ever got, but I'm ready. I want recovery. I want a better life. And Dopey is what has inspired me to be in recovery and get connected and be sober and live fucking life. I didn't even know about recovery till I listened to Dopey. I mean, I always heard about people going to rehab. I never really understood recovery. Thanks to you, Dave. You kept it going. Thank you. If I didn't have Dopey in my ear all day, every day today, probably wouldn't be. If I didn't have Dopey in my ear all day, every day, today probably wouldn't be day one. So thank you, Dave.
Joey Pepper.
That's so sweet.
Hold on.
Yes, Joey Pepper. When was this sent? Where is he? How's he doing?
Okay, there's something called the Dopey Nation was something that we would make fun of our listeners and call them the Dopey Nation. And I would kind of do a weird preacher at the end of the show and say, stay strong, Dopey Nation. And that was the beginning. And then it became a real thing. And then after Chris died, they started a group on Facebook called the Dopey Nation. And now there's like 5,000, 6,000 people in it. And like, they have Zooms. They have fucking 25 Dopey Nation Zooms a week where they champion the alt recovery movement. And they're going to love you, by the way. I know that's a drop in your 4 million empire.
Listen,
like, yes,
it doesn't matter. I did not set out to have that many. I think that if just one person hears something and is like, I'm going to try something different today, then literally my work on earth is done, I feel like. And so the numbers are a bonus. but I think it's amazing what you're doing. And it has to make you feel so proud to see all these connections being made in this community that you and your friend created.
It does. It does. I mean, I was like, I always wanted to have a talk show. Like I always wanted to have a talk show. And then we had fun making the show. And I'm kind of like, I'm coming around to the fact that the show helps people. Like that's in my mind. I like it. It makes me happy. It's fun. Like you and I had a bunch of laughs. Like it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
I like fucked up stories. I love being in recovery, and I love the process of putting a show together. Like I just enjoy the work.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that people are like getting something out of it is like a side effect. It's like, and I don't know, like, you know, last year we sent like 13 people to free treatment, like scholarships. And yeah, I mean, like, and so like, I'm starting to embrace like that Dopey actually does some good besides give me fun and make me a little bit of money. But it's, yeah, dude, I'm so happy. And I'm so happy you came on. You were such a great guest.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored. And I would love to, I don't know if I'm allowed in the group, but I would love to see the goings on of it. I think it's incredible that you created this community. It makes
the community created itself. The community is autonomous from the show. They do whatever the fuck they do. They're crazy. But they would love it if you joined the Dopey Nation or if you were a part of the whole thing. But they're autonomous. They some of them like the show. Some of the people in the Dopey Nation never heard the show. I hate those guys. I say there's one guy from Scotland or Ireland who had to, you know, say that he never listened to the show, and that just broke my heart. His name is Derek Hines, by the way. So Derek Hines, I know he's not listening, but
you have like a shrine at your house with like a picture of him. You're like,
I have a voodoo doll. I'm constantly poking my Derek Hines voodoo doll. He wrote me recently. He wrote me this beautiful note that Dopey really made his life better because he's made so many friends through the Dopey Nation. And an interesting fact about Derek Hines is he owns a sweet shop, a candy store in like Ireland that's like 100-year-old candy store.
Wow.
And I bet you he'll send you some candy if you want.
I was just going to say, Derek Hines, I like you and would love some of your candy.
I bet you he'll read your book and listen to your podcast. He won't listen.
You know what I'm always so afraid of? It's so stupid. But anytime somebody like sends me food or gives me food behind my tour, like before my tour or after my tour, I'm like, what if somebody put drugs in here to sabotage my freaking clean date? And it's such a dark thought, but I never know.
Right.
And so I'm always really reluctant to eat. I'll still eat it, but I'm reluctant to eat it just in case.
A woman like brought cookies to my job, right? Like a listener brought cookies to my job and vacation when she did, right? And when I got to work, it had been like 10 days since the cookies were there and I still ate them. Fuck that shit.
I know. It's like a fear. It's there, but I'm willing to risk it for a treat.
Tell me the tour. What is the tour?
I am on tour with a couple of my friends. It's for moms. It's me and my friends have kids at different ages. I have little kids. My friend has kids in middle school, and my other friend has high school and college age kids. So it's basically a journey through motherhood from the different perspectives of moms raising different aged kids. And we've had 11 shows so far, and 10 of them have sold out. Surprisingly, we have new tour dates, and it's a lot of fun.
It's like mom comedy, like momedy.
Yeah, I don't think your audience would be interested. I did a tour a couple of years ago on my own about recovery, and it was really successful and wonderful, but nerve-wracking because I was by myself. And so this is a little less stressful because I've got my friends with me, and it's not about me.
Right. Well, it's about parenthood, but there's so many parents in the Dopey Nation. I want to tell you a quick story, and then I want to ask, and we'll let you go in a second, but just one quick story.
Okay.
So I'm on vacation, and I'm with my daughter, and we're at my father's house, which is on a lake, and there's a concert on the lake, and we're all kind of paddling around to see the show, and everyone's smoking weed, right? Everyone is smoking weed, and my daughter's 11, and my wife told her what weed smells like. And I was a big pothead, but like I don't ever say to my daughter how much I used to love pot, because I really did. I loved it. And I have a feeling you did too, just from that passage where you talk about the buds. I think people
I was super paranoid though.
So you didn't love weed like that?
Not publicly. Like if it was just me in a movie in my
Right.
room, I loved it. But if I had to talk to people, I hated it.
Right. I loved it. I was like so in it. And I felt like this weird, like you don't see people on heroin hanging out. You don't see people like licking the coating off of oxys and doing lines in publicly. But like, I guess alcohol you do and weed you do. Like, have you had an experience with your children where like, you know, you remember who you are kind of thing? Like it's a double life in a way, or it's many lives we get to live. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like, do you ever feel like that?
No, not really. My kids are still so young that
I don't mean that. I mean like where you remember, you were like, oh shit, I was like this and now I'm like this.
Oh, every day.
Right.
I just realize every time I look at their faces, I'm like, they wouldn't be here if I was still living that way that I was living. It's every single thing in my life is a reminder of, I try to remind myself every day of where I came from because I don't want to go back.
Totally. And the juggling the Jenkins empire didn't come to you in one pop. It just developed.
Yeah. It happened very quickly. I think after 3 months, I had my first 1 million followers and it was incredibly overwhelming. And I find myself getting caught up in it as well. All these people needing me and wanting me and
loving you, adoring you.
No, but I have this thing where I feel like I have everybody fooled and it's very terrifying to me. I feel like any minute now they're going to realize that I'm not as great as they think I am. And it's like this self-identity thing that I struggle with daily. Like, because my husband doesn't get nearly as excited when I walk into a room as somebody who is one of my supporters does. They cry and freak out and they're so excited. But this person who knows me better than anybody was just like, hey. And so I'm like, if they knew me like he knows me, then do you know what I'm saying? Or my friends know me, that they wouldn't think of me the way that they do. And so I tried to just remind everybody all the time, I'm not perfect. Whatever image you have of me in your head, I'm grateful, but it's not real.
Right.
It's based on clips that I have put out on the internet for you to watch. So keep that in mind.
But that's cool that your supporters cry and have nervous breakdowns when they see you. My people aren't going to do that when they see me.
You don't know.
They're not going to do that. They're just
Do a
going to
meetup. They might.
Blah, blah, blah. Tiffany, you are the best. You were so much fun and such a great interview and conversation. You're right. I asked questions though. It would technically be an interview.
Yeah, no, you totally get credit for being an interview. I was just so natural that it didn't even feel like it.
Will you watch Oz and come back on Dopey and talk about Oz?
I would love to watch Oz. Unless it really sucks, then I might not be able to stick through it.
It's not good. I'm telling you, it's not good, but you're probably not going to be able to stop watching it.
Maybe now that I'm going into it knowing it sucks, I'll be surprised.
And Dopey Nation, if you have any comments, questions for Tiffany, write us at dopeypodcast@gmail.com. I will pass it along. And at the end of the show, we say, stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris. You want to say that too? You want to say stay strong? Because he would say fucking toodles. He would say toodles, right? At the end of every episode,
And you do that every episode?
Every episode. Because I hated that he said toodles. And his whole thing was that he wanted me to say toodles. And I never would say toodles. And then now I say fucking toodles for Chris because now I have to.
I have goosebumps. Fucking toodles for Chris.
Thank you, Tiffany. You were great.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yo, what's up, Dopey Nation? This is Johnny Takes AK, the Rugged Shot, aka Chuck Lewis. What up, Dave? Big ups, Chris. Toodles for Chris. Dopey Nation. Good so bad. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Have to walk around this neighborhood, but I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. That desire is all I ever had.
watches aeroplanes just passing by.
I wanna see you leave, jetliners take a dive, just to show all these people what it means to be alive. I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. That desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand.
Wonder would they pay it any mind if I leave this busted city far behind?
I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. That desire is all I ever had. It's all I ever had. It's all I ever had.
It's all I ever had.
And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. It's all I ever had. It's all I ever had. And I want my dad. It's all I ever had.
See, Toodles. Toodles for Chris, man.